existing forest, or you can add a new forest. So adding a new forest usually happens when if this domain controller is the very first in the network, right? So that means this is the first time you are adding a domain controller to a network. So then you have to have a new forest. Otherwise, you usually add it to the same forest, right? Okay, then you have to give a name. So this, coolgadgets.com or niftytools.com, that is the fully qualified domain name, right? So we call it FQDN, fully qualified domain name. Yeah, for the new forest root. Yeah, so you have to first give a name for the forest when you have. So I will show that, right? Then, right. So this FQDN. So it's the full name, right? Here. So niftytools.com, that is the full name of the domain. So yeah, it includes all parts of the name. Right. Okay. Here, domain control options window, you will choose the forest and domain function level. This is what I told you about forest and domain functional levels. So these functional levels contains, that are you going to have mixed mode or single mode, like that, right? So mixed mode also you can have version wise. Like if you want to have a very old version in the mixed mode, or the previous version from the current version, the previous version, right? Or only the newest version. Then you can select the capabilities of your domain controller. So yeah, the domain name server, then global catalog, read only domain. Right. So this global catalog, if we when we are adding a new domain controller, if we put this global catalog to the new domain controller, that means it can actually work on its own, right? So global catalog means, so yeah, as the name says, it's global. So if the root or the whole catalog or the contents, or active directory and whatever, all those contents that need for the domain to be function as a single unit will be synchronized or copied, right? If you add this as a global catalog, if you don't put this, so actually the domain controllers which have the global catalog, they can work on its own. They don't need other domain controllers, right? So for example, let's say we have some servers, the same network, right? Yes, these are all connected, right? So let's say this one as the global catalog, and this is actually, we put one. This is a primary server, right? These are secondary servers. Let's just put numbers. Right. Now, if we don't put the global catalog, if you don't enable the global catalog flag in these two, right? So if this fails, right? Now these two cannot function without a global catalog, because they don't contain actually the information, all the information which is needed to function as a standalone or single unit, right? This can function if there is a global catalog. So these are actually dependent on this global catalog server, right? Because this contains all the the directory, or the configuration, and all the configurations are in this global catalog. So the other ones only have a subset of that, a part of that global catalog, right? Not the whole thing. So they cannot function alone. Even if you, let's say this server is power off, right? If you power down this server, this cannot function without this, right? So if you want to have these additional servers as backup alternate servers in case the main one fails, right? So then we have to make this at least one of these servers should be global cat. Right. So now, yeah, right. Now in the case this one fails, this can work as a standalone server, right? It doesn't, this doesn't actually need this one also. But this, since it's not a global catalog, the third one, it needs actually some other server with a global catalog. Otherwise, it will not function, right? As a domain controller. Right. So that is this global catalog, right? Then you have this read-only domain controller. So if you put this, if we make a domain controller as read-only, uh, so any changes, you can't make any changes to this domain controller, right? So other servers you can make changes, but read-only means you can't make any changes to this domain controller. So it will, so you can't log in and change anything here, right? It's read-only. So maybe for security reasons, so any changes you do to this global catalog will go and apply there. But uh, if you log into this read-only domain controller, you cannot change anything from there, right? So whatever changes in the other global catalog will apply to this, but here you can't do any changes. So these you can separately log into this server and do any changes, and they will automatically apply to other servers, right? But in this one, you cannot log in and change any settings, right? So it has been made a read-only domain controller, right? So like for example, you cannot create users, or you cannot change the group policy, or audit rules, or whatever those things you can't change, right? Whatever changes which are done in the other servers will automatically get copied here, but here you can't do any changes. Okay, so enter password for directory services restore mode. Yeah, this mode is actually to recover in case let's say something happens and your Windows won't boot up, maybe due to, I don't know, maybe file corruption, or this domain maybe service some corruption of the Active Directory or something, right? So this mode is it's like the safe mode. It's just called another name in the server, right? Yeah. So you can see a boot mode used to perform restore operations on Active Directory if it becomes corrupted or parts of it are deleted accidentally. Yeah. So this Active Directory, so those most probably those will be stored in files also, right? The configuration. So files can get corrupted. Maybe due to improper shutdown, or the hard disk gets corrupted for some reason, right? So yeah, things like this can happen. So that is why you should always have backup, right? So right, sometimes yeah, even if you have more than one domain controller, right, and then that means you have backup, right? Sometimes if this corruption can get copied to the other domain controllers also, right? Because it's always any change in one of these will be copied to another. So if there's a corruption, sometimes it might get copied to the other servers also. So it's better to have a offline kind of backup of this Active Directory, right? So that if something like that happens, you have some kind of working version to restore, right? Otherwise, if there's a corruption and so let's say there's a corruption in this one, the second one, there's a corruption, and it copied that corruption to the other servers, right, from the synchronization. Right now, so then we don't have any actually working version which we can use, right? Because all will be corrupted. So if we have an offline backup of one of these, right? So that won't be affected by this copying or synchronization, right? Offline backup. So in a case like that, you can actually restore from the offline backup. So these are things that you have to keep in mind, right? Because these things happen. And I have actually experienced these things happening, right? Okay. So I hope this is clear. Right. Right. So this is what I was talking about. Functional levels. So for us functional level 2012, if you put like this, then actually 2012 will can only be used in that forest, right? And domain also, if you put like that, then domain also you can use only 2012, not previous versions. So if we are creating a new forest and new domain, so actually we can have it like this. If you are planning to have all 2012 servers in the domain, right? If you are planning to have some old previous versions, then we should change this to the older version, right? Functional level. Otherwise, we will not be able to use those old versions. Right. Then capabilities. So DNS server, it's needed and it should be there. Then global catalog, as I said, yeah, definitely the first one you have to put, you have to have the global catalog, right? The first domain controller. The next ones which you will be adding, if you want, you can put, yeah, so you cannot make the first one a read-only domain controller, right? So the first one definitely should have this global catalog function feature. Right, then this is the password that we use to when we are using the safe mode or directory services restore mode, which we need to use if the Active Directory becomes corrupted. So remember that if the Active Directory becomes corrupted and when we are going to safe mode, right, the login we are using is not an Active Directory login, right? It's actually local username and password. So that is why we have to mention it separately. So the person who knows this password only can do the recovery or restore if something goes wrong, right? Without knowing this password, you cannot fix anything, right? Right, so these are the options, some of the things that you have to do. Okay, let's see if so in your virtual machine, actually you can't press the Control Delete, right? You have to press host key plus delete. Okay, so yeah, this will take time to boot. See, it's actually yeah, getting the configuration whatever is available from the server, right? You can see a progress bar here. Right. Okay. Okay. So it has booted up. Right. So here. So you start by adding a role, right? Then if you want to remove anything, the shortcut is available here, right? So I showed you last time. Yeah. So it gives you some steps that you have to, first you have to do. The administrator account has a strong password. Yeah. So you have to make sure that admin account has a strong password. Network is static IP. Yeah. Then updates, Windows updates are installed. So yeah. So before adding any roles, you have to make sure you update your server, right? Any security updates, whatever. So otherwise, yeah. So after you put the domain service or whatever, file service or whatever, you started to use them. So you might want to put it public, or so before doing that, these updates and all those things should be done, right? To make sure that you don't get any viruses, or no one can hack into the system. Right. So here it's saying, if you want to check whether these things are done, you can close this and then check and then come again, right? Okay, so I will just go next. Right. So it's asking if I want to go role-based installation or remote desktop service installation, which is using the virtual machine-based method, right? So I'm actually going to do in the server, right? In the physical server, or the virtual server in my case. Right. Now it's asking me to select a server or virtual hard disk on which to install roles and features. Yeah, so actually, yeah, so this is my server, or actually this is a virtual hard disk, but since it's running in a virtual machine, it's a server, right? A virtual server. So this server pool can contain more than one server, right? If you are, managing all the servers from one server. But here, so this is my server. Yeah, so this page shows servers that are running 2012 and they have been added by using add servers command in the server manager. Yeah, in this server manager, here can you see there's a thing called add other servers to manage. So using this, you can add other servers which are in the network to this server, right? For management purposes. Then you can create a server group, right? And then organize, let's say, the servers which are in one server room, you can group it to one group, and then in another server room you can put it to another group. That is just for management purposes, right? Creating groups. Right. Then right, offline. Yes.
ඔතන මේ virtual hard disk එකේට මේ දෙනවා කියලා මේ rows මොනවද දෙන්නේ? එතන මොකක්ද තියෙන මේ වෙනස මේ server එකටයි virtual hard disk එකේ? ඔතන
virtual hard disk කියන්නේ එතකොට virtually තමයි role එක දෙන්නේ. virtual hard disk කියන්නේ එතකොට මොකක් හරි create කරපු එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. create කරපු මොකක් හරි version එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. Okay, here so select a server on which want to mount the virtual hard disk. So that means to have a virtual kind of server. Okay, so actually this is a virtual server, but if you think this as a real server and I want to install this operating system to a virtual server, right? Virtually, so that I can install many operating systems, then I can select this virtual hard disk feature. So if you select a virtual hard disk from a network share, that share must, right? So yeah, so I can have this virtual hard disk in a network share, right? So it's not actually my own hard disk. It's in another network share. That means someplace else, right? So then it will be working through the network. You have to have good network then. The reason for using this is, right, Now, if I use a virtual hard disk, that means storage is somewhere else, right? That means if the destination server storage is somewhere else, then if this server fails, right? So since that server, that hard disk is actually located somewhere else, it can be taken over by another server, right? So, okay, do you get what I'm saying? Now let's see, okay, think of this as a physical server, right? So it has a physical hard disk in the server. Now, for some reason, if the server is not working, right, this hard disk cannot be accessed by anyone else, right? Because this hard disk is inside the server and the server is not on to use the server, right? Okay, something happened to the network, right? So usually if we have the storage in a separate place, right, without having in the server, physically in the server, then if this server physically goes down, right, so actually we have the server image in a separate storage area, so we can use actually another server to use that uh, that hard drive or that storage. Okay, let me draw it in a diagram. Say these are servers. So these have internal hard disks, right? And then we have some separate. So this is kind of a device which contains separate storage. It contains storage only. So these can consider as hard disks, right? So this we can consider as a storage server. Yeah, we have a lot of physical hard disks available, right? So these are just two servers physically, right? Okay, now let's say we have this domain server, whatever. We install Windows Server in this server one, let's say, right? So let's say we have 2012 installed here, and maybe 2008 installed here. So okay, let's say we have a domain controller role installed in this server one, right? Now, if for some reason this server is not working physically due to hardware issue or whatever, right? Yeah, then what will happen now? Whatever the installed images or whatever, it's in the internal hard disk of this server. So this cannot be accessed from the outside, externally, right? Because it's the internal one, and only if the server is working only, you can access this. If the server is not working, you cannot access this hard disk, right? The same in the server too. Now, if we are using, so if you are, let's say we are not using this, or there are no hard disks in this server, right? So actually we have a separate storage server with a lot of hard disks. So we can install the domain server. So we are installing the server, but we are using a separate hard disk to the network. That's a virtual hard disk. This we call a virtual, right? Because it's not inside an actual. We call it virtual because it's in another location, right? Not inside the server itself. Now, if we do like this, right? So if we install domain server, whatever, so it's actually in this hard disk, the image. right? Installation and everything, configuration, everything. So now, if for some reason this goes down, right? Okay, now, so we don't, so if you install internally, we cannot access from any other server, this internal hard disk, right? But since now the location is outside or in a common place, where anyone can access. Yeah, so actually, yeah, so this is 2008. So we installed 2000, sorry, 2012 here. Then so we can, let's say we have another server. So if this server goes down, now currently server one was handling that, right? It was using the resources to get whatever the read the files and whatever from this, and function as a domain controller, right? So this is just a hard disk in the storage server. It cannot function on its own. There should be some kind of server hardware with processing RAM and everything which can work on the hard disk, right? So if this goes down, then what we can do is, so we can actually allocate this to another server, right? So now this server can actually access this hard disk, which is in a common place, and then run the work as a domain controller, whatever, which was this server was functioning as, right? So this can also work in the same way, right? So now do you understand, by having the storage in a central location, what is the advantage uh, against if we have the storage internally in the servers, right? So internally, if we have, we cannot definitely access this from outside, right? So it's only control. It can only be controlled by the server hardware, right? So here, if we have the storage in a central location, um, we can access those files or whatever, and then we can work on them, right? So we can have a backup scenario like this in case the server fails. So we don't have to copy this or whatever. The hard disk is in the common place in the storage server, so we can assign a separate server and run this task, right? So actually, for these things to happen, it should be in a virtual kind of environment, right? So VMware, uh, so in VMware actually you can do that using VM Sphere and so on. I can't remember the name actually, but VMsphere or something. They have a software which you can manage those kind of virtual servers, right? And you can transfer the functions to another server. So those can actually be automatically done, right? So yeah, so I hope you understand the advantage of having the image in a central location like this. So that is what we can do from here, having a virtual hard disk, right? Right. So I will select. So yeah. So what other things does it say? Yeah, that share must be granted and right permissions that is selected to mount the VHD. Yeah. So you can have this image in a network share. So like the one I explained. So even another server can access that. If something happens to this server, right? Yeah. So here you can, yeah, if it is online, you can select from here, If it is offline, you can give the path, the network path to the virtual hard disk, right? Then, yeah, whatever the configurations will be added in this server, right? So, right. So, any files or whatever so any files which is stored in this hard disk physically. So if you select a virtual hard disk, those will be stored in that network drive or share, right? Not in this own hard disk, right? So I will select this server. Yeah. So currently I have not added any other servers, so I will only see my server, right? Yeah. So if you want to add servers, I showed you earlier, you can use the add server command in the server manager and add, right? Offline servers and embedded servers. Right. So any servers which are offline, if you have added them, also they won't show here, right? Only online servers will be added, shown here because you can work only on online servers. And yeah, it says here offline servers and newly added servers which data collection is still incomplete. Yeah. So even if you add the servers, so this server has to collect some data from the other servers, right? Through remote management, this server has to collect some data from the other servers. Then only it will actually show here, right? After the completion of getting all the data which is needed to manage, right? Okay, so currently I have only one server. Now I'm selecting that. Okay, now we are selecting the roles. So what we need actually is this one, ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services. You can see that this file storage is already installed, right? So if you want to remove, you have to go to that remove wizard and then remove. So these are the other things that are available. So you have web servers, web server, remote desktop services. Yeah, so here you have DHCP server, DNS server, fax server, application server. Then Active Directory, there are some other additional things, but here what we mainly need is this one, right? Active Directory Domain Services. Yeah, so it's automatically giving saying that these features need to be added, right? So yeah, and this include management tools if applicable. It's automatically selected. So I press set the features. Right. So yeah, DNS service also needed. So it will tell me later if I don't select it, right? Let's press next and see. Okay, the description says, yeah. When you click on this, it will give a description of what these things do, right? Yeah, so this ADFS, it provides single sign-on capabilities. So this is like LDAP. So this is Active Lightweight Directory Services. So it can be used for applications, simple applications. So this is rights management, authorization, permissions, those kind of things, right? Okay, so let's click this. Okay, so here I can select whatever the additional things which I need. Group policy is by default selected. So if I don't want to manually select any of these, I will just go with the default option. Yeah, so this is automatically selected, I think. The required ones are automatically selected when I selected the ADDS one, right? So if I want anything additional, I can select from here. Okay, so this gives an explanation of what this ADDS is. It stores information about users, computers, and other devices on the network. So it helps to securely manage sharing and everything. And then this is required for directly enabled application, Exchange server, there's a mail server, and then other things such as group policy. Right. So here it's said to help ensure users can still log on to the network in case of a server outage. Install a minimum of 2 domain controllers. That is what I said earlier, right? So you should have at least 2. In case one server goes out, something happens, or yeah, sometimes yeah. So server can go down for some reason, right? Right. Then it says ADDS requires DNS server to be installed. If you do not have a DNS server, you will be prompted to install DNS server role on this machine. So it will ask me to install this DNS server when I'm going forward, right? I didn't select that actually, but this will suggest me, and then I can install. Yeah. So it's saying it will install these DFS namespace replication file replications, which are needed for the ADDS. So the critical or required ones will be automatically selected. I don't have to go and manually select, right? Yeah. So now the last part, yeah, I need to confirm whether I want to install. Right. So optional features might be displayed because they have been selected automatically. If you do not want to install, yeah, if you want to remove anything which is selected here, you have to go back and then remove those features. So here you can actually export the configuration settings if you want. Yeah. So as I said, for automation purpose, yeah. So it's saying here usage in PowerShell. Install Windows feature configuration path. Then you give this file name. So this allows to automate this function on other servers. So if I want to do this, in the same thing on the other servers, so I have to click select and click next here, right? So instead of doing that, just by running a command in PowerShell, and so I have this configuration settings which I saved, right? So what I did here, the settings, all the things, I saved in a file, XML file. So I can use that file actually to do the same thing without opening this and clicking next, right? Just running that command with this configuration file I saved, it will do the same thing, right? I don't have to sit in front of the server and click next. So I don't have to waste time for that. I just give the command PowerShell and then use the configuration file. So let me show you. So I think you have an idea about XML files, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's like HTML, but it's advanced version, right? XML. So I think it's better if I can open this in the browser. So this contains, all the selections I made by clicking next like that in the setup. Okay, see so these are all tags, right? You can just expand or collapse these, right? These tags. So these contain what I selected in the setup. So by using command in PowerShell, so I give these values to that command saying to use these features, right? It's the same as running the graphical tool, and So what I'm doing now, right? Okay, so now I will install. So it will take some time. It says you can close this wizard without interrupting the task. Yeah, to see the progress, open this again by clicking in the notification bar. So this is basically how you add the domain service role. So after this is done, actually it will ask me to promote this server to a domain controller, DC. So this is actually installing what I have selected, right? The ADDS service and some other things which it needs. Group policy, that definitely should be there, right? You have to configure policies properly for groups. Okay, so seems it will take some more time. Let's go back to the slide. Right, so in the DNS, yeah, you have to create some values in this DNS server also. Yeah, so you specify the location of the Active Directory database log files. Yeah, so these are actually done by that tool, right? So after installing the ADDS service, then these steps will follow. So it will ask me where I want to save these files. So Active Directory database, so whatever we do in the Active Directory, so it's actually stored in a database, that means in a file, right? And then we have log files and things like that for the Active Directory also. Why do we use these log files? Anyone? Why do we use logs?
uh, to find some errors what we done so far, and
Yes, for debug purposes.
yes.
The reason why these log files are used is for debug purposes in case things go wrong, right? So when these programs are or these applications are running, it will usually put everything in the log file. Even the success ones also they will put, like this process has run successfully, right? So usually all the values will be there so that it will be easy to identify in case something goes wrong, right? So if something goes wrong, that whatever errors or whatever will be there in the log file usually. So to fix some fix a kind of error that comes up, right? So you have to look in the log files, like in what step it failed, and looking at the error entries in the log files, you can actually fix those errors, right? So that is the purpose of log files. So um, writing to these log files, it slows down the applications and all that processes. But since it is easy for us to debug in case something goes wrong, so usually those features are enabled. So that is why when you install like big software like this Office, Microsoft Office and so on, the reason it takes a lot of time is actually that setup. It uh, it logs everything which has been installed, right? So the setup, it will copy files to your hard disk, and it will actually write some log files in a temporary folder, right? So every step it will log in the file. So just think, a lot of things will be written to the hard disk. The files will be copied, and then the log files, it's continuously updating, right? So that is why it takes a lot of time. It's logging everything so that, in case something goes wrong, we can fix it. Sometimes even we don't need to look at the log files. Sometimes, I don't know whether this has happened to you, but it has happened to me. When you install, sometimes, maybe due to corrupt files or whatever, let's say the Office installation, Microsoft, if there comes an error in the middle of installation, right, and it cannot continue, maybe due to corrupt file or file missing, then actually it will undo whatever is done up to now. Let's say setup, Office has installed, let's say up to 75%, it has installed, and configuration, registry, everything, right? Now, if there's a critical error and it cannot continue, so it will give an error, it will show the error saying critical, and then um, so when you click OK or back or whatever, it will actually undo that installation which was done halfway, right? We call that rollback. It will roll back, right? That means it will undo everything it did, copying files, copying to the registry, right? All those things it will undo. So to do that, it needs these log files, right? Which states, okay, what things were done in an order. So in a reverse order, if you roll back, so all those things should be done in the reverse order to roll back, right? So yeah, so they have created these setup files and all, thinking about that also, right? If something goes wrong, or let's say you were installing Office and then suddenly your computer turned off, right? Maybe due to overheating, or maybe you were working on your battery and then suddenly the battery went dead, right? Or yeah, so anything can happen. So yeah, so that process is stopped halfway, right? So sometimes, since it was not stopped properly, right, it was interrupted. Maybe when you start it again, you might not be able to continue, right? There may be some file corruptions or copying incorrectly, or maybe in the registry. So then maybe you need to undo all of that and start from the beginning. So usually in setups, they have created a process like that, right? Okay, let me see if I can. Okay, yeah. So the adding the domain role is complete. Right, now can you see here in the top, additional steps are required to make this machine a domain controller. Promote this server to a domain controller. So it's suggesting there, right? So there's a link there. So if I click, it will automatically, yeah. So this is the tool to uh, promote this server to a domain controller, right? Right, now those steps which I told you earlier. Add a domain controller to an existing domain, right? So I don't, so then I have to select a domain. I don't have currently a domain which is available. Yeah, I will just, Yeah, so there's nothing. Right. So then I can add a domain controller to an existing domain. I can add a new domain to an existing forest. So yeah. So I can select whether tree domain or trial domain. What does that mean? So yeah. So tree domain means I'm creating a domain in the same level or parent level. So child domain means I'm going to create a domain under the parent domain, right? Right. So this is adding a new domain to an existing forest. Then adding a new forest, right? So the very first time I have to create a new forest. If I'm so this is the very first domain controller I'm going to add. So there's no domain, there's no forest. So yeah, so I'll give it a name. So domain name. So it can be some name .com or so there should be something you have to mention after the dot, right? Or you can specify like .local. So if we are having these com domains, so those are com is used for commercial purpose. So that means most probably that will be put up as a public one, right? So since now my domain is let's say I'm just having activities to create username accounts for students, right? So this will be an internal purpose, right? It doesn't need to be available to public, or I don't have to have a public IP. So I will put like that local. Right, now comes the functional levels. Okay, right. Okay, so actually this function level, this has only is up to 2008. It cannot have 2003. So if I select this, right? So then this has, this I cannot select. Yeah, yeah, the forest functional level, if I select 2008, right? Then the domain. Yeah, so those two are different. Now, forest contains all the domains, right? I can have multiple domains in the same forest, right? So, yeah, so usually if I select a lesser level with this forest, so usually the domains also I cannot have this a higher version, right? This should give me an error. Yeah, I will just type the password. So this is the restore password which you use to recover. It's like the safe mode. This is not the Active Directory administrator, whatever user password, right? This is the user which will be used to restore in case things go wrong in the Active Directory, right? Like Windows doesn't boot. Okay, so here I will put the password. Okay, yeah, so actually, yeah, it didn't give me an error. Okay, so anyway, in this domain, if I select this, in this domain, I can only add domain controllers with this kind of 2012 R2 only, right? I cannot add any domain controllers with 2008. Okay, okay. I guess maybe this is okay because yeah. So forest, yeah. If I put 2008, then the domain I put 2012. I can install this 2012 version in the domain, and only 2012 this version I can install, right? Previous ones I cannot because this is the highest version. And the features, whatever will be, if you take the forest at a forest level, the features will be limited to 2008 if I select like this, right? The newer 2012 versions, oh sorry, the features will not be available in the forest level if I select like this. So I will select the newest level so that yeah, so 2012 cannot be, or I can't even have any additional domains with 2008 now, right? If I put the highest one here. So if I put the lower one, actually later on I can upgrade this to 2012 also, right? Let's just put like this then. So I put password here, global catalog. If by default I cannot remove. So DNS server I need for the operation of the domain server, right? So it's automatically selected. Then I cannot make this read only because this is the first one. Okay, there's an error there. It's not due to that, right? So this is a warning. Yeah, so yeah, this is because there is currently no DNS server, right? Yeah, so only now I'm going to install the DNS server. I didn't install the service earlier when I was adding the roles. So that is why it is saying that. Yeah, so it's taking the name from the name I used earlier. So it will take, so the net bias is, this is actually the name used when, booting up and things like that. Before booting into Windows, this name will be used, right? Not the full name, .local. So yeah, you can change this here if you need. Then click next. Right. So here you see the paths which your configuration is saved. So the activity database is saved in this NTDS folder. Log files are also saved in that folder, and then sysvol. So this is the sysvol folder, right? So yeah, these are the default paths. So they say that it's better to have the default paths. If you want, you can change. So yeah, they are specifying some things, maybe giving some recommendations. Yeah, you get this. Yeah, it's giving a description for this. Okay, let's have a break and then come back in 15 minutes. Right, the default location are always system root. So it's C Windows usually, right? If you want, you can change. So the ADDS database file is ntds.dit in the log files and like that. Right. So yeah, it doesn't give any additional information. Here the default paths are there. So it's usually better to have in the default paths. If you change this, sometimes maybe when you are using tools or with other tools, or sometimes yeah, it will be difficult if you change the default path. So usually you should have those in the default path. Okay, so here to review our options, right, what we did so far. So configure the server as the first active related domain controller in new forest. So that is what we did. We created a new forest and a domain, right? So the new domain name is, yeah, this is what I put, right? Tag.local. Then this is also the name of the new forest. So we created a forest with unitech.local, and then we created a domain in the same name, right? So NetBIOS name is Univotech. Then the forest functional level is currently 2008. Domain functional level is 2012. So if you have made any mistake in the options, we can go back and then um, correct them. So additional options I have done is global catalog is yes, DNS server yes, DNS delegation no. These are the paths. So DNS server will be configured this computer. Okay, then, yeah. So this computer will be configured to use the DNS server as the preferred DNS server. So what does that mean? So if we check the network properties, right? So currently my DNS server setting here is actually the router, right? So after I configure this, so it will be my own server IP. Right, because now currently I don't have a DNS server in my server, but after I install the DNS server service in this my server, so this can act as a DNS server, right? So I can use that DNS server so by default, right? So currently what I have here is, yeah, this IP address is been automatically put by the uh, virtual box, right? Yeah, so actually my the router IP range is this, and so this has been automatically given to this server by the virtual box, right? And then this default gateway and all those things, those are done by the virtual box. Okay, so this also can be, these settings can be exported to PowerShell script. Yeah, so yeah, you can see here the script. It's so in PowerShell you can run this script so that the same thing we can do somewhere else. So let's see what. So import module ADDS deployment. So this we can type in the PowerShell uh, command window also, right? Then install ADDS forest, create DNS delegation false, database path is this. The domain mode is 2012 R2, domain name is this, netBIOS name, then forest mode, install DNS true, log path is this, no reboot on completion is false. No reboot on completion. Yeah, so that means this should be automatically rebooted. Right, so system volume path, then force they have put to true. Yeah, so if we need to run this wizard or this setup process again, we don't have to actually need to open this and go next and select, right? We can save this script file somewhere, and then we can use this to automatically run all this using the PowerShell. So as I said, PowerShell it's used to automate things like this. Yeah. So more installation options. Yeah, there's nothing more to be said there. Right. Now it will verify the prerequisites for domain control operation. That means it will check if all the things are there. Right. So here it will it gives a green mark saying that all prerequisites check passed successfully. That means are all the dependencies or whatever needed to run the Active Directory, are those complete? Right. So it will check and then it will give the green light. Right. So here there are some warnings it gives, but since we have the green light, we can go. Right. So what are these warnings? Domain controllers have a default for the security setting name allows compared with Windows 94 that creates weaker and have a default for security. Yeah, this is mentioning some features that this has, right? Windows NT4 is the very first server operating system, which I think came with Windows 98, I think, or 2000. No, Windows NT4 is before 2000. I think this came around Windows 98 that time, right? So this server started from Windows NT4. So that was the name given then, right? So with Windows 98, the server version was Windows NT4. So very limited capabilities compared to this, right? Then came Windows 2000 server. You must have heard. So with Windows 2000 came Windows 2000 server. So after 98, I think you had before Windows 2000, there was some Millennium versions or something, but those are not. Uh, it was a bit enhanced than 98, but not that much of security and so on, right? Windows 2000, that was the most secure operating system then after 98. There was a lot of security introduced, and NTFS, this file system, was introduced with 2000, right? Earlier FAT32, actually there was no kind of security in the file system, right? Anyone can delete files and so on in FAT32. If you have used operating systems like 98, uh, if you had admin or normal use account, they can go and delete program files, system files, and so on. System files, I think there was some kind of recovery procedure there to automatically recover, but the other files, normal users were able to delete, and they could do things like that. No amount of security, and viruses also, they can infect um, anything. Right after 2000 came, that is NTFS file system with permissions, file permissions. Then security was increased quite a lot, right? Like if you are using a normal use account, viruses cannot infect system files, Windows files, and so on, because due to the permissions that were given to the files, right? So Windows 98 had FAT32, which do not have any file permissions or security to prevent that, but starting from 2000 it was there, right? So This computer has at least one physical adapter that does not have a static IP address. Yeah, so this server should actually have a static IP, but I have not put an IP, right? Uh, so as this is just for demonstration purpose, but if you are installing actual server, you have to have a static IP. I told you the reasons. It should the server should be able to function on its own, and the IP should not change, right? Because if this is a domain server or let's say file server, whatever, the clients will be depending on this server, right? So if the IP change, the clients will not know, and they will not be able to get the service. So that is why we use static IPs to these servers. And having so we can have DHCP, we can have static leased IPs, but if the DHCP service fails, then that's a total failure, right? Because this won't have an IP. So having a static IP, we don't have to depend on the DHCP server to get the IP, right? So that is much better. Yeah, so it says static IP assignment should be done on all physical network adapters for reliable domain name system operation. Right. For the DNS, it's definitely important to make sure that the IPs don't change, right? Otherwise, it will not work, right? So, especially that is the reason why static IPs should be there. So delegation DNS server cannot be created because authority parents don't. Yeah, because Windows this does not currently have the DNS server installed, which is why it's giving that error. Right. So it's saying prerequisite check completed. All prerequisite checks passed successfully. Now I can click install. If you click install, the server automatically reboots at the end of the promotion operation. Right. Now if I click install after promotion of this to domain server controller, it will automatically reboot. So I will do that. Yeah, it's showing the same messages again. So it's showing what the progress and what's been done, right? So it's creating the partitions now. Okay, so the server is being restarted. So as you can see, it takes a bit of time to, if this server version was the minimal version or the core version with text mode only, it will boot faster than this, right? Right. Sometime there was nothing at all in the screen. So if for some reason it got stuck, then we won't be able to know even that. Okay, shall we go to the slide until this boots up? Right, so we did all this DNS option, then the path window, then into the review option, then did this check before activating this window, right? So we did this. Right, so yeah, then installing additional domain controllers in a domain. So yeah, Microsoft recommends at least 2 DCs. That DC means domain controller, right? So in every domain for fault tolerance and load balancing. Yeah. So two purposes. Fault tolerance means in case one fails, the other one can take over. And load balancing. So the load can be shared between the two servers if you have two, rather than if you have one. Right? If you have one, then the whole load will be handled by the one server. Right. So installing additional DC is not unlike installing the first DC. Biggest difference is that you select add a domain controller to an existing domain instead of add a new forest. Yeah. So it's the selection you make when you add the second one is you have to select add a domain controller to an existing domain. Right. You don't select new forest again. The second one, right? Only the first one you select add a new forest option. Right. So you need to know about these things when you are adding a new domain controller. So let's see. Right. So the server has booted up. Yeah. Now can you see the difference? Earlier the username was just administrator. So now what do you see? So this is the domain name / administrator. So now I'm logging into the Active Directory account or domain account, right? Not this is not the local account. So these two are different. So for some reason, if you know the Active Directory is not working now, when I turn on the server, so this is actually from the Active Directory, right? If for some reason the Active Directory is not working, I will not be able to log in using this Active Directory or domain account, right? Then I will have to go to the restore mode and use the directory services restore mode to fix the Active Directory, right? So because without the Active Directory, I cannot. I mean, this system cannot authenticate my username and password. So now I'm actually logging into my domain account. So can you see? This is my local administrator account, and the domain administrator, since it has the same username, it will create another folder. It will create, add a additional something to the same name, the folder name, right? So this is actually the name of the server, right? Sometimes it may be the name of the domain, right? So yeah, so you see, if I check the path of whatever the files I have, now check this here. This is my user folder, administrator dot that one, right? So okay, now if I right now you see some additional things here. So you see this ADDS and DNS. So here also you see that, right? ADDS and DNS. So here the roles are shown. Now there are 5 actually. Yeah. So earlier there were only file and storage, local server or servers. Additionally, we have now ADDS and DNS. So this actually check the status of whatever the services which are installed, right? And then if there are any errors or anything, it will be shown here. So this green color means usually that means it's okay. So if I click this, yeah, so I see the events which are there for this server. Then if I click DNS, then it shows me the DNS server events. And this we looked at earlier. Right, so if there are several servers here listed here, if I haven't added any other servers, I can click that, and I can read or get information from those servers also. Yeah, so here you see there's some kind of error here, which we might have to fix. So see, you usually should check the event logs. So they display any warnings or errors which are there, so you can fix them before it complicates things. If there's a small error, then you should fix as soon as possible. Um, if you don't, sometimes it might become a complicated matter, right? So some things might not work, and yeah, you might have to fixing it in the early stages are easy rather than waiting for um, other things to happen. Maybe this thing can get worse, right? So usually as I remember in 2008, there was a when you look at the events, usually these errors, they contain a red icon so that you can see it easily. But here it doesn't seem to show that. Because when you see red color, then you know that definitely it's a some critical thing and you have to fix it. Yeah, warnings are okay. Like it's better if you can fix, but there can be warnings. It doesn't need higher priority. If there are errors, then definitely you should find what is the cause of that, and then um, find a solution. Right. So this is basically now this service actually in the domain, right? And Active Directory is there now. Now if we so usually those will be in the administrative tools, right? So Active Directory users and computers. That is usually what we need to manage the Active Directory users and computers. So here we have the domain, right? Yeah, so you can see you can do many things here. If you check the properties, yeah, so domain functional level is 2012, forest functional level is 2008. So this domain functional level I have set to 2012 R2, the latest one. Latest means, I mean, the install according to the what I have installed version, right? Not the latest one, because I think latest one is 2019 or something, right? Yeah, so the forest functional level I have kept it as 2008. That means I can um, add additional domains, right, with this 2008 functionality. Now remember that this forest is now working in 2008 compatibility mode, which means the newer features which might be in 2012, that those which do not work in 2008 will not be there, right, at the forest level, right? So yeah, at the domain level, so I have selected 2012. So yeah, so I think since domain level is 2012, I have to install the same R2 um, domain controllers if I'm adding any additional domain controllers, right? So otherwise I can have additional domains with some other functional level. Right. Then managed by, I can put a name or whatever here, saying okay, it's managed by this person. That means this domain, right? So this is the net bias name. So that is there for compatibility purpose with older systems, right? So this full name cannot be used with older systems, right? So for compatibility purpose, this is there, right? So those are the functions of the domain properties. Then here, so we can change the domain, right? That means let's say we have 3 or 4 domains in the same forest, and if we need to manage another domain from this server, then I can select it here and I can change the domain. So actually I'm running this tool, right? So currently I'm managing my own the domain which belongs to this server, right? So if I want to select another domain to manage, which is already in the same forest, I can select it here. Then there are some other things. I can change domain controller. So currently I have only one domain controller here. If I have 2 or 3, then I can change to another domain controller to manage the Active Directory and all that in that domain controller, right? Yeah. So um, yeah, so I can change it to any writable domain controller, or because there can be read-only domain controllers also, which you cannot actually change, right, or do anything. So this means domain controllers which are not read-only, right? Then the domain controller or ADLDS instance. So which has this ADLDS, so, right? It will list the domain controllers which have that feature, right? So we only have one, so we can't see a difference here. Yeah. So can you see if there are 2 or more servers? Uh, this will show the version installed, server version, and if it is offline or online. GC means global catalog, right? So I don't have any other. Right. Then raise domain functional level. So actually, I cannot raise the domain functional level because it's already at the highest. So it's saying, it's giving the message, right? This domain is operating at the highest possible function level for, yeah. So 2012 R2 is the highest function level, and the least function level is 2008. Now this is the domain function level, right? Not forest. So this is how you upgrade the functional level. So the forest also you can do that. Yeah, that should be in another place. Right. Operation masters. So there are these 3 roles. RID, PDC is primary domain controller, and this is infrastructure. So currently I have only one domain controller, and so this is the master of all these 3 types. Right, so the RID master is currently this server, PDC master also this server, and then infrastructure master also this server. Right, this okay, the operation master of this manage the allocation of RID pools to other domain controllers. So only one server in the domain performs this role. Right, so the master can be only one domain controller or server. Right, so this is actually called the primary domain controller, right? So all others will be secondary domain controllers, right? So this is the so we have to make someone primary, so that whenever we update something, it will go to the primary. It's like this. So this is the primary domain controller, and this we can call it as secondary domain controller. So all the others will be actually secondary domain controllers. So this definitely has the global catalog. So these may be or may not. Okay, so the masters. So okay, this definitely is the master of all these. RID. So this is the master, right? So let's say you make any change in this Active Directory or anything related to the domain in the global catalog or whatever, right? So since this is the master, so this will automatically apply to this, no issue. Right, now if you access the Active Directory or any other configuration, okay, so okay, this is a global catalog, so that means all these things, the same copy will be here. But the master is this, right? So these are all we can call as slaves, right? So this will be the master, the primary one. So if we change anything related, uh, um, anything related to this master thing, right? Any Active Directory or whatever. If we change using one of these, so yeah, if you do some changes, then okay, so these definitely have to be applied to all the domain controllers which are available in the domain, right? So how that happens is this doesn't actually send to all the domain controllers. That is handled actually by the master or primary domain controller, right? So yeah, so any changes and all that, it will send to the master, right? So then this will update whatever changes done in this server. Then let me draw another server. Right. So any changes done in the other servers, it will update the primary or the master of uh, these services, and then the master. Yeah, it's better to put a arrow, right? Yeah, this will send the updates to here, and then this master will update all the other slaves or secondary domain controllers, right? So yeah, so this is basically how it happens. Let's say there are 5 6 domain controllers. So any change made in one of the slaves or secondary domain controllers, so it does not directly send to the other secondary ones, right? It sends to the primary one or the master. That is why it's been configured as the master, right? So it handles everything or manages the slaves. So any changes you update to the master, then from the master it's updated to all the slaves or secondary. So that is normally what will happen. Right. So you can transfer this master operations master, we call it, right? RID operations master, PDC operation master, and infrastructure operations master. So if for some reason you need to change the primary or your master, right? Maybe let's say the master is old machine or hardware server, which we want to put to some new, let's say the newest server we have, the latest one, right? The reason is there should always be a master, right? Without the master, you can actually, the others can function, right? Especially the global catalogs one can function without, if the master fails, or yeah, if the master fails, but certain things cannot be done without a master, right? Because the master is the one handling all the secondary ones. So we should make sure that we give this operations master role to a reliable server. So let's say we started 5 years back with our initial server, which then was the operations master, because so definitely the first one will be made the master, right? Right now, let's say there are 5 or 10 years gone, and yeah, let's say we have some new servers we have purchased, and we have add them as secondary, right? So yeah, so if you think now that old server, which is maybe 5 or 10 years old, right? So it might fail, you know, because servers, we can't say that they will last a long time. At one point they are definitely fail. So the most recommended or suitable thing is to actually use a new server as master. So we can actually transfer using this. Yeah, okay. Um, yeah. So I have to run this maybe in another domain controller. Or, since this only has one domain controller, yeah. So actually I cannot. There's no one to translate, right? Yeah. It says first you must connect to it to transfer, right? So yeah, since currently there's nothing, I cannot use that option. So if uh, after I have installed some one or two or multiple secondary servers, I can transfer this to one of those servers. So I have to make sure that I do that before this server fails. So this is as a example I told you. If this master is a very old server, then definitely we need to transfer to new one, right? To make sure that, because let's say if you don't transfer it and the server for some reason fails and it's not working, right? So we cannot recover, or maybe it's too expensive to recover, something like that. It can happen, right? So if this master is suddenly it goes to not working state, right? Then if we can't recover, then actually there are some limitations and we cannot do some things without having a master, right? Now you cannot transfer the role also to a new one unless your current master is online, right? So if before transferring this master, if it fails, right, if the server fails, then you have to um, actually there is a way. So you have to forcefully, so you have to actually run some commands, and you have to forcefully remove the master from the previous one, which is now not working, right? So because those details are copied to every server, right? So you have to actually forcefully remove that master from the database or from the configurations, right? So there are tools available, because that sort of thing can happen, right? So then you can, after forcefully removing the operations master, that is current master, you can assign to a new server, right? So there are three kinds of masters. Either you can have it in the same server, can be the master for all this, or you can have several separate servers for this, right? So there are some roles that each of these three perform. So this, it says, ensures consistency of objects for inter-domain operations. Only one server in the domain performs this role. Right. So this is used for inter-domain operations. This emulates functions for primary domain controller. For pre-Windows 2000 clients, so only one server in the domain performs this role. Yes. So this actually emulates the functions of a private domain controller. That is for clients which are older than 2000, Windows 2000, right? Right. This actually controls the allocation of RID pools to other domain controllers. So these are the three functions available. So this operation master, this can be viewed from any server which is in the domain. Just go to operation masters and then you can change, right? So I am the current master here, this server. So I can transfer this to another one, or I can go to another server, and in that also I can open this dialog box, and then so it will show me the operation master as this server, right? When I'm viewing from the other server, it will show me as this server. Then I can transfer that to my own. I'm talking about logging into another server which does not currently have the operation masters, right? Role. So from that, I can transfer to myself, or from here, I can transfer to that other server. Okay, any questions so far? Lot of, yeah, things are there, right? Some, how these work. So you can see how complex this is, right? Right, so these are some groups, or we can call these OUs, or organization units. These are default, right? We cannot delete this, right? See, these are created by default, and any new OUs we create, we can delete. Right. So these are the security groups. If you check your Windows normal version, I'm not sure if in the home version whether these groups are there, but professional version, you have not a lot like this. You will have administrator, power user, and normal users. But home version, I'm not sure. Maybe that is not there, because you cannot do advanced user configuration in home users, home version, right? So maybe the power user also is not there. I think only the administrator and normal users is there in the home version. But the professional version, you have administrators, power users, and normal users. Guests also should be there in home version, I think. I'm not sure. Right. So you have a lot of groups here. So they have different, permissions, and they can do different functions. So administrators, as you know, they have the full permission, right? Then we have some additional things called so account operators. Okay, the description is here. They can manage administrator, domain user, and group accounts. So they have permission to add or delete, then disable or enable user accounts, right? So if one person has specifically given the role of creating and managing accounts, maybe changing password, reset password, right? We can give that person account from this group. So the members, it shows who are the users that has been added to this group or given this permission, right? And then member of which group, then managed by. So all we can include. We have backup operators, those who are doing only backup, running backup operations. So the relevant permission has been given to them, right? So we can make sure that people don't get unnecessary permissions, right? So they only get the required permission to do their job. That is the reason these separate security groups are there. So they can only perform or run tools which are related to their task. They cannot do additional administrative like commands, because usually now if you give a normal user does not have these permissions, right? A normal user cannot create accounts or delete or change password, whatever. Then backup also, you need to actually have admin kind of permission to do backup operations, right? So just giving the user, we cannot do those things or take that kind of work from those people, right? So a limited number of administrative permissions has been given to separate accounts like this. We have event log readers, so those are meant for permissions to read the event logs or do certain tasks with event logs, right? Then what else? We have print operators, remote desktop users. So we can give specific permission for users to remote desktop to this server, right? So only people who are in that group will be able to remote access. So users will not be able to remote desktop to the server, right? So then there are server operators, right? So yeah, so all the permission levels are different. In you can actually add a user to uh, multiple groups also, right? A user can be added to, like, if the same person is doing handling accounts and backup, you can put that user to both these groups. So they will inherit a combined kind of permission level for that account, right? So just think how complex this, because it's not easy, right? So each of these groups having different kinds of permission, and if you are giving multiple group permission to them, then they should not clash, right? So they have to be properly implemented so that security will be stable, right? So this built-in has the built-in groups available. We can create new groups if we want. We can create a new computer group, organization, or user, right? This computer folder has all the client computers which are added to the domain, right? So the minute we add computers to a domain and it's successful, the name of those computers will be shown here. So currently I don't have anything added to this domain, so I can't see anything here. Then comes the domain controllers. So these are the domain controllers which are available in the domain. Right? Currently I have only one controller in the domain. So minimum I have to have at least two. So if I add another one, that will be shown here as well. Right? So by default, domain controllers, so what we add to the domain, right, will be shown here. So these also, you can see, you can check the properties. So this is the global catalog one. NTDS settings also you can see. Yes, the global catalog has checked. Yeah, this shows you actually the other servers. So replicate means copy from this to the other server, right? So if you have 3 or 4 domain controllers, you will have those values here. So the operations master controls how this replication is done, right? So settings will be replication from some servers, and then that means coming from some servers, and then replicate to means going from this server. The settings will be going from this server to other servers. Right. What else do we have? We have the operating system. It will show the operating system. Yeah. So yeah, this server is a member of univotech.local/users. So this server is actually a member of uh, these users, right? Yeah. So these are some security settings. Then we can set the location, who is managing, then dialing. This is for remote access and so on. So those are the settings which are available. Here, you can, if you want, you can add it to a group, right? Or you can just drag and drop to some group. You can do things like that. Yeah, you can reset if it's something wrong with this computer, and maybe it's not connecting to the domain for some reason. That you cannot log in that client to this domain. So you can maybe reset the account to see if it corrects. Then you can move to somewhere else here. Then what else? Manage. This opens the computer management tool. So the domain controllers, all the domain controllers you have here, you can do all these things, right? So you can open computer management and remotely connect with another server or domain controller. So you can maybe check what are the devices connected in another server also, right? And then disk management, event your task. So in another server also you can do this. Manage from here. So those are basically the things there. Then yeah, so these are some security related stuff. Yeah, currently in the users folder you have the administrator, which is the super admin. And then yeah, so this is the domain admin account, right? Not the local one. Then you have guest. This is also the domain guest. So it's usually default disabled, right? Yeah, it shows to enable account. That means it's disabled. Now if I right click this, it says to disable. If we check the settings, yeah, so it's disabled currently, and if you want, we can enable it. Then there are some other security groups for which we can add. Right, so you can see here. Yeah, so here you have some additional groups like domain admins, domain computers, domain controllers. Yeah, those are some global security groups. Domain guests, domain users. So normally, whatever the accounts we create will go under the domain user group. right? Right now, yeah, you have here DNS admins. Those have some additional kind of permission. Even just an administrator does not have that permission. So domain admins have additional permissions rather than just an administrator, right? So then DNS admins also, they have some additional permissions. Those are meant for, like, big tasks. If you are just an administrator, you won't be able to do certain things unless you are one of these, right? Yeah, so I'm actually a member of this domain admin. Yeah, if I check this DNS admin, yeah, so there are no members. So and schema admins, those are also, yeah, so I'm already a member. Yeah, usually in 2003 version, these permissions are not usually there to the administrator, but now they have given. So I can check one of, yeah, so you can see the number of tabs if I take a user account, right? So here I can type first name, last name, blah, blah, display name, office telephone number. Yeah, I can fill these values. So when I create a user account also, I can fill these values. But if I am using this graphical tool, right, then, one by one, for each user, I will have to create, give these values and so on. So if I want to create, let's say 100 or 1000 users or something, right, then I have to create a batch file, and then use some script commands of PowerShell to, automate, right? Because it's difficult to create hundreds or thousands of users manually, right? And these details also can be input using the shell scripts automated, right? So you don't have to type everything for each user manually. So here, address, we have to type everything manually if we create like this. So these values also you can automate. Here my password never expires, but usually the new user accounts we create, they will expire at some time, right? We can restrict changing password, and then usually when we create a new account, we put this must change password at next logout, right? So how that works is actually when we enable this option, the password is automatically expired, right? So that is how we, uh, so a user logs in the first time, he sees, okay, since the password is expired, definitely he will have to change the password. That is how it is done. So this user must change password and password never expires. You cannot put those two options at the same time, right? It will give an error saying, because how this option works is it's expiring your password. Now, if you put this, uh, that is the opposite, right? It is contradictory, so it won't work. You can't put both those options together, right? There are some other options as well. Here, account is disabled means I can create an account, and initially it will be disabled so that the user cannot log in until I enable, right? So those kind of security options are there. And we can include a smart card for logon, additional permission, authentication for security, right? Smart card is like a device where you have to maybe insert it to a reader or something and authenticate that you are the correct user. So you have to maybe type your password, and then you have to use this card also to log in. So those are extra security. And there are some other, these are security related ones, right? Right, then I can, when I create an account, I can, now if I think, okay, this person needs this temporarily, maybe for a week, 1 week, I can put this in expire dates. Now administrate, I can't do that, it's disabled, right? I can't expire it. So I can give an expire date. So let's say, okay, I want to this account to expire tomorrow. Sometimes there's a time also which I can give. Then it will expire at that time. So after that time, that user cannot log in to say that the account is expired, right? So that is therefore, we don't have to, remember and disable those accounts. We just give an expire date, then they will automatically expire after some time. Then if they need it after that, those users will definitely contact the administrator, right? So no issue. But then we can have, um, right, so it cannot be done to this administrator account. So we can restrict the logon hours, right? If we restrict for certain days, only between, let's say, 8 and 5 office time, people can log in, or maybe morning 8 to 12. So if we restrict, then they cannot log in after those hours, right? This logon to is actually, if we have 2 or 3 domains, we can restrict the user to one of those. Yeah, and then we can actually restrict to some computers in a lab also, right? So it's like this. Right, so it's like this. Let's say that, yeah, there are few computers in the lab. So these are all part of one domain. Let's say, yeah, this is a lab, one place, right? Room. So all these are uh, connected to the, let's say, my domain. Now I have created in the Active Directory a user account, right? Or just have a name. Right, now all these computers are in the domain, right? The same domain. This is a account of this domain. So yeah, so this person or user can by default log into any of these computers, right? Because it's in the domain, same domain. Now, if I want to, let's say, restrict this person to log into, let's say, one of these machines only, so I can do that by that value. So if I enable that, then this, let's say, only to computer 1, then that person can only log into computer 1, right? You cannot log into all the other computers. So we can give restrictions like that. Then profile, yeah, this is where we can put a profile for that person if you want, right? Like an network profile, or some we can put a actually profile which cannot be changed, like a static profile, right? So we put all the permission and settings and everything, and when that user logs in, you will get that profile, cannot do any changes, or changes won't be saved. So there is a lot of security kind of thing which we can do. We can put a login script for this user if we want, right? So it will be put here. Then when the user logs in, a script will run, and we can do whatever we need permissions, right? Then this will be the home folder. So we can maybe give a if we have a storage option. Now here we have the file storage option also, so we can create a home folder and put that here. A network path we can directly put here as a share, or we can actually map a folder as a network drive, right? So usually the letter starts from the end, right? So then we give a share path here, right? The home folder path. Then when that user logs in, that person will automatically uh, get a network path to that
Hello. Take care. Hari.
Okay, there was an issue with the network. Right. So yeah, let me share again. Right. So I was talking about the network drive. Right. So I can map a network drive to a shared folder, so that when you log in as the domain account, right, in the client machine, you will get a folder, or you will get this Z drive in your my computer. So when you double click, it will actually connect to your network share in the server, where you can save files. So if the network becomes slow, it will take some time to save your files, especially if you are saving big files, right? So that also is possible. So I can give that to any user. So these are some other things which you can fill up. So remote desktop, you can give a specific path, or if you don't want remote desktop, then you can disable using this. Then this enables remote control of the user by the admin, right? So admin can take control by using this permission. So when the admin takes control, actually by default, it asks for the user's permission. Do you want to allow this person to control, right? So that option is there. If you remove that option, um, so without asking the user, is it okay if I control, right? Administrator can take control without asking the user, right? Directly take control of your computer if this option is removed. Then here you can either have control to just view the user's session, or you can actually control the session. Right here, you can see what this user account is a member of. So there are several things here, right? So I'm actually part of the domain admin group, domain user group, enterprise admins. and schema admin. So those domain admin, schema admin, enterprise admins, those are like super kinds of groups where permission is needed to do big critical changes in the server. Then you have this dial-in. Yeah, this is for remote desktop purpose. Then you have the environment where you can uh, to have some settings like connecting client drives, printers, things like that. Then you have the session. What is the active session limit, idle session limit? So you can you know give settings like this. So these are there for each user account that you create, right? So this account is actually disabled, but you can enable it if you want. Yeah. So yeah, I can show you here. This is how you can actually control the logon hours. Now here login permitted, all blue, all days, right? Now I can restrict this to here. You can see the time from 12 midnight to, yeah, again 12 midnight. So this is 12 noon. So I can deny, I can select, right, because all of this is selected. Whatever I do is, yeah, if I want to enable only a limited time here, then what I do is, easiest thing for me to do is disable all, and then I will select whatever the needed time slot, and yeah, so others will be enabled only during this time this person can log in, right? If I want to disable only a certain period, so then I will do the other way, right? Then I will enable all, then so only during these times, let's say I want this account to not be able to log in, right? So you have to yeah, so these values are there for the hourly, right? 4 means 4 o'clock, and this is 5. In between half an hour you can do like that, right? So here it shows you the values. Tuesday to Thursday from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. Login is denied. You can't put half an hour here, right? So you can put only to the full hour, right? So I will cancel that. I don't want to change anything. Then this, yeah. So you see, default it says the user can log into all computers in the domain, but I can restrict to only one or few computers using this. Then I have to type the computer name and add here. So if I select the following computers, then the person will only be able to log into those computers only, right? So I can restrict that. Then yeah, right here, see, I can give expiration date. Okay, the time is not actually given there. So if I put a date, it will expire that date, right? I think starting midnight, maybe, yeah, it will expire. Right. And if a user's account is locked for some reason, let's say try to type the password incorrect 3 or 5 times. So according to the policy, the account will be locked, and so I can unlock the account by selecting here and applying that, right? If only the account is locked. So locked out account and disabled, those are two things. If you want to manually like disable the account, we have to go and disable. This locking happens due to some unauthorized use of the account due to some policy or something like that, right? It happens automatically. So actually, sometimes according to the policy, it might unlock in a few hours. But if you repeatedly try to type the incorrect password, then that locked out time might increase, right? Maybe to days. So that is how policies are there usually. Okay, so those are about the user accounts. Yeah, just give me a minute. Okay, so how we create, right? So if we select new, yeah, we can create new computer, contact, group, int of person. Yeah, so this is organization unit, that is OU, enter user. And so we can create the user outside also, but usually uh, we put users inside the OU, right? Yeah, so this option is there, protect container from accidental deletion. So accidentally, you have to make sure that we do not accidentally delete it, right? Because what will happen if we accidentally delete it is all the users inside will delete, right? So we don't want that. Then we have to create all the users from the beginning, right? So yeah, it's like deleting a folder. Then everything inside will be deleted. Okay, so let's like create something like this, students, and then yeah, I will create students. So it creates just a folder like this, right? Yeah, let's see if I accidentally delete. Yeah, so it will ask me for the confirmation. I think if I don't put that accidental deletion, right? So according to the policy, the password cannot be blank. So yeah, and I think we can't put a simple password also. Yeah, see, does not meet password policy requirements. Minimum password length, complexity. Yeah, so by default, you see, I think the minimum password length is, I think, 8. Yeah, so it doesn't give a specific error, it will just give a common error. So, this has to have, usually it cannot contain the name of the username, right? So any, first name, last name, those things cannot have. Right. So let's try to delete this. Okay. Yeah, so it got deleted. Yeah, so yeah, it says that recovery is not possible because I did not make that when I created. I did not use that checkbox saying protected from accidental deletion, right? So yeah, if I delete, it's gone. Right now, here I can, yeah, I can maybe create a new organization unit inside this. So I'm going in a sub level now, like creating subfolders. Right now I can maybe, now rather than having all the students here, now if you take your university, in a university actually you have several batches, right? You don't have just one batch. So, maybe it's easy for me to, have separate folders for the batches. So I can give them any name. So then they can be properly organized. And, I can give, if you take one of these OUs, yeah, I can separately give or apply permissions. Yeah, so that for that I have to actually go to group policies. Yeah, so here I think, okay, so it didn't open. So anyway, when I'm going to create group policies, I can separately apply to groups like this, right? So here I can create the people who are in the 19 batch, right? Even this I can break down. So this is like creating groups, right? But there's a group option also, but uh, this organization unit is the one you have to use actually, right? Because you can separately give uh, group policies to these organizational units. So maybe I can, according to the stream and all that, so I can create. Now I can create only the students under the stream here and like that. And maybe if they have separate classes or yeah departments, I can like that. So you get the picture, right? So having this in an organized way like this, make sure that now if I want to look at, okay, what are the how many users are there in one batch or one group. So one batch okay, so that I cannot directly count because there are subfolders. But yeah, so I can see directly in this stream if I have all the users here. um, then I know, okay, there are this amount of accounts in this stream and so on. So this is basically how you create OUs, and then you can create users in these OUs. Or you can have, let's say you create a user here. Yeah, the password I have to give something. So now currently it's not in any OU, just as a student. Maybe I can have some common kind of account here. Then if I want later move this account to one of the groups, I can do that. So it's asking moving can prevent our existing system on working the way it was designed. So moving OU can affect the way that group policies are applied. Yeah, so the policies will be different when if I move this person to another group. This user will inherit a separate policy. So are you sure you want to move? Yeah, it will confirm, because if you do this by mistake, there will be an issue. So it will always ask a confirmation. So I say yes. Right. Now this person will inherit the information in this OU and the top parent ones also, right? Any specific policy is given to this, and any other inherited ones also. So let's say this person, this user, let's say he changes it to this other stream, right? Then we can move him to that one like that. So policies will automatically change according to this OU or group, right? Inheritance will automatically. So it's like moving among folders. When you remove a file to a different folder, permissions and everything will change. Automatically inherit from that folder, right? Unless you have yeah, right, in a folder or file you can actually change the permissions not to inherit, right? Then of course it will not automatically change when you are changing the folders, but in this case um, the group policies will automatically be applied to the user of the current OU. So basically this is how we will manage the Active Directory, right? So whatever the computers you add to the domain will all come up here. You can have separate OUs for those also, but by default, all the computers you add to the domain will come here, right? So initially, the very first time you add a computer to the domain, so the very first time, right? So it will come here. So after it appears here, you can actually, maybe create another OU here. For example, let's say this. Uh, yeah, let's say this that's lab dedicated to semester one. So yeah, so the after adding the computers, they will come here. Then you can just drag and drop them to this OU, right? So then you can apply separate policies to that lab, right? Maybe group policies that you need to that lab. Then so automatically those computers will inherit those group policies, right? And then those will be pushed from this server to those clients, the policies, right? So yeah, after initial adding those computers to the domain, so if you like remove those computers and add again with the same computer name, uh, so it will be actually the place where I put it will not change, right? So it will be here. If I remove those the computer which has already been added from the domain, and then if I change the name and add, um, then again it will be in this common group where you have to drag and drop to another the place you want, right? So all computers you add will be here. All domain controllers you add to the domain will be here, right? So like that. So if you want to put separate policies for the labs, so you can create a separate OU and drag those computers to that OU. Then you can apply group policy. So usually in here, so group policy, that's a separate tool. So here it says forest unotech.local. That is what I created. So what are the domains inside that forest? So currently I have only one domain. Yeah, so here it shows this is the baseline domain controller for this domain. That is primary domain, right? Yeah, so the fully qualified domain name is actually first the name of the server and then the domain name, right? So that's considered as a fully qualified domain name. Yeah, so you see that here at the bottom also. Yeah, so there's a default domain policy here. So group policy is enabled. Yeah, it has a modified date also. So that will be inherited by all the, so this default will be inherited by all the OUs, right? So yeah, so here's the default. Yeah, it gives you a warning. So this is the default domain policy. Whatever you do here will be applied to all the OUs available, right? This is global. So you should only put, the common permissions that you need to all these OUs, only the common ones, right? Yeah, so this shows, right. So yeah, this shows the whatever the configuration which is currently done or enabled, right? The default configuration. So here you can see the policy. Enforced password history is 24 passwords are remembered. So that means up to 24 passwords. Usually, you cannot, I think, use the same password, right? 24 times. It's remembering means, yeah, you cannot use the same password like 24 times. So it's keeping a history of the your passwords, right? Then maximum password age is 42 days. So after 42 days, we'll have to change your password. Then minimum password age is 1 day. That means if you manually change your password, right? Let's say now you are changing your password, you cannot change your password again unless 1 day has passed, right? After 1 day only you can again change your password. And the minimum password length is actually put to 7 characters here. And they have put password must meet complexity requirements. So that means they have to mix, letters, numbers, special characters, right? So this group policy makes sure of that. Then account lockout, that has not been put actually. So it says 0 invalid logon attempt. So that means account will not be locked, right? So if you change, you can put to either 3 or 5. So if a person tries to log in with the incorrect password 3 times, then that account will be locked. So that is for security purpose, so that you know that if let's say someone tries to log in with your username, right, trying to guess the password. So if we put this security to lock from 3 attempts, 3 incorrect attempts, then that person can only try 3 times, right? Guess 3 times. So then the account will be locked, and then again until the account is unlocked, that person cannot try. So this security is to prevent people from doing that. Then yeah, some other so policy settings are there. Yeah, so there is, okay, this there's an expiry date to the, not for the login, that is for the key. That is for the public key. There's an expiry date set for the administrator, which is quite long. Now this is 2021, so they have put quite a long time to for the expiry date, right? So these are the default yeah, settings. So you can change this as you like. This default, which will be applied to all the OUs, right? Now, right. So there's currently only one group policy object, which is the default one, default group policy. So you can create, let's say, if you want, yeah. So here you can see there's nothing here. Yeah. So this you have the default domain controller settings. So these you don't actually have anything. Right. So let's say you want to put for the lab a special one. So then you create a, you have to create a new one. So I will put like this. Right now this has a separate group policy. So the default will definitely be inherited here, but now I am, uh, yeah, I can put the order also here. So this this separate group policy will be applied first, and then the default policy, whatever there is, applied. So now, yeah, so I can enable and disable this group policy as I want. Yeah, so if I enforce, it will be, the group policy will be forced to the user, right? Otherwise, it will just be applied without force, right? So yeah, so by going to edit, yeah, so you have this group policy in your computers also, but I'm not sure whether home version maybe it doesn't have that. So I think professional version has this group policy. So uh, yeah, so you have some policies for the computer and then some policies for the user. So whatever the policies what we do here will apply to the computer settings, and then in the user configuration what we do there will apply to the specific users who are in this group. So currently we are actually having a group policy for the lab. So um, we need to actually consider about this computer part, right? So if we are applying for the users, like in the students group or OU, then we can use the this user configuration part. So you can see if you check the policy, there are various things that we can do. So if we take, for example, control panel, or let's, yeah, okay, system, it has a lot of, yeah, so you can do certain things by putting this policy. So for example, let's say the control panel. Yeah, so do not display the lock screen. So, we can prevent that. Yeah, it's computer configuration, so it will be applied to that the computers in the lab, right? These settings, then force default lock screen image. So these will be applied to the settings to the computer, right? Specific background color, then yeah, apply default picture to all users. So then that will apply the user picture as something we put there, right? Then regional settings, you can change some values. So like that, you have various kinds of policies. So yeah, so like that you can edit and right. So here, yeah, so I have not changed anything. So it says no settings defined. But earlier you saw in the default domain policy, after we change um, those values or policies, it will be shown here. Whatever you do. So you can just have a summarized view of what are the policies you have applied, right? And if you think that you haven't put, uh, you have missed some, you have missed some policies, then you can again go and change those. Right. So yeah, so we will conclude for the day. So yeah, so those group policies can be applied. So as I showed you, yeah, to students. If I put a group policy to students, it will apply to all the sub OUs which are there. Or I can, yeah, so I can put the common uh, policies which I need to apply to every student in that student group policy, right? Then specifically, if I need to put any permission or whatever, if I want to block certain things from, let's say, 19 group, those people should not be allowed to do these things like that. So I can specifically give separate policies for those users or that group, right? So yeah, so creating OUs like this, you can separately manage, and you can separately give permissions according to the requirement. And maybe like people or students who come newly, the fresh batch, maybe we don't want to restrict that much. But then when they get used to the system, they might try to do various things. So we will have to put more permission and so like that. Okay, so yeah, we will stop for today, and then we will continue the next day. So do you have any questions? So usually this doesn't have yeah, usually you don't, it's just a logout, right? It doesn't have a shutdown because you usually don't shut down servers. So I can use, so this is the PowerShell, right? So I can use the shutdown command. -S is to shut down. And then I'm giving the delay as 0. So it will immediately shut down. So if you want to turn off the server, you have to properly shut down, right? You should not just turn off the power. Okay, then we will meet next week. So have a good week and stay safe.
Have a good day. Thank you, sir.